The rain came down in sheets that gray November morning, turning the perfectly manicured lawn of St. Andrew's Memorial Chapel into a mirror of the sky's grief. I stood at the edge of my mother's grave wearing a black dress I'd borrowed from my roommate because I couldn't afford to buy one. My shoes were leaking water through a crack in the sole, and I could feel my toes going numb in the cold. Uncle Gregory stood under a massive black umbrella across from me, his expensive suit perfectly dry, his expression a careful mask of sorrow that didn't quite reach his eyes. He leaned toward his wife Diane and whispered something I wasn't meant to hear, but the wind carried his words straight to me like a slap across the face. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Poor thing can't even afford proper funeral attire. Catherine should have thought about that before she wasted her life playing property manager. Diane's response was quieter, but I caught enough. At least we won't have to worry about her expecting anything from the estate. There's barely enough to cover the funeral costs. I felt my face burn despite the cold rain. 23 years old, standing at my mother's funeral, and my own family was already calculating how little I deserved. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly suspect, was that Mom had spent the last 6 months of her life making sure I would never need their pity or their charity again. She'd prepared something they couldn't imagine, and Marcus Way, her business partner who stood silent and still near the back of the gathering, knew exactly what was coming. He caught my eye for just a moment and gave the slightest nod. "Wait," that nod said. "Just wait." The service was everything Mom would have hated. Reverend Paul Hendricks kept the ceremony brief and dignified, but the relatives who barely visited her in life suddenly had endless stories about dear Catherine and her humble, simple existence. They painted her as a woman who worked hard but never quite made it, who did her best but fell short, who loved her daughter but couldn't provide much beyond affection. I wanted to scream at them that they knew nothing, absolutely nothing about who my mother really was. But I kept my mouth shut and my eyes down, watching the water pool around my damaged shoes. Let them think what they wanted. Mom had taught me that sometimes silence was the most powerful response you could give. The Brennan family had money, old money that stretched back 3 generations in Riverside, Connecticut. My grandfather built a shipping company that my Uncle Gregory now ran into steady decline while still living off its reputation. They had the big houses on Maple Ridge Drive, memberships at the Riverside Country Club, and that particular brand of arrogance that comes from inherited wealth rather than earned success. My mother Catherine was the youngest of 3 siblings, and from what I'd pieced together over the years, she'd always been different. She asked too many questions, challenged too many assumptions, and worst of all, she fell in love with my father, a kind man with no pedigree and even less money. When he died in a construction accident when I was 5, the family's response was predictable. They offered just enough help to feel generous while making sure we knew we were charity cases. Mom took a job as a property manager for a small apartment complex on the edge of town. The family treated this as confirmation of her poor life choices, never bothering to ask questions about the long hours she worked or the frequent business trips she took. Gregory would make jokes at family gatherings about his sister collecting rent from deadbeat tenants, and everyone would laugh while Mom smiled quietly and said nothing. I grew up in a modest 2-bedroom house that the family considered barely acceptable. I wore clothes from discount stores while my cousins flaunted designer labels. I attended public school while Russell went to Belmont Academy. Every family gathering was a reminder that we were the poor relations, tolerated but never truly included. But Mom never seemed bothered by it. She had this calm certainty about her, like she knew something they didn't. When I was upset about not having the latest phone or the right brand of jeans, she would stroke my hair and say, "Claire, people who need to announce their wealth usually don't have as much as they claim. Real security is quieter than that." I didn't understand what she meant until much later. The receiving line after the burial was torture. One by one, relatives and family friends offered their condolences while their eyes swept over my cheap dress and worn shoes. Mrs. Pemberton, who'd known the family for 40 years, actually patted my hand and said, "Your mother may not have left you much, dear, but at least she gave you a good heart. That's worth more than money." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Aunt Beatrice, Gregory's older sister, was more direct. Have you thought about what you'll do now, Claire? You can't have much saved on that coffee shop salary. We might be able to help you find a position somewhere. Nothing glamorous, of course, but honest work. Before I could respond, Marcus Way appeared at my elbow. His presence was quiet but commanding, and something about the way he carried himself made Beatrice take a small step back. Miss Brennan has several options available to her, he said smoothly. Mrs. Brennan made sure of that. Beatrice's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Oh. I wasn't aware Catherine had any significant assets to leave. The family was under the impression that her estate was quite modest. Marcus smiled, and there was something in that smile that sent a chill through me, though I couldn't say why. Mrs. Brennan was a very private person when it came to her business affairs. The full extent of her estate will be revealed at the formal reading tomorrow. Gregory had been standing close enough to hear this exchange, and he stepped forward with the kind of forced bonhomie he used when he wanted something. Now Marcus, let's not get the girls' hopes up. My sister worked hard all her life, but we all know property management doesn't pay that well. There's no shame in a modest inheritance. We're family, and we take care of our own. The way he emphasized family made my skin crawl. This was the man who'd forgotten my birthday for 15 straight years, who'd never once invited us to his summer house in the Hamptons, who'd made jokes about my mother's career at every opportunity. Now suddenly we were family. The reading is tomorrow at 10 a.m., at Morrison & Associates downtown, Marcus said, handing Gregory a business card. All interested parties are welcome to attend. Interested parties, Diane repeated with a little laugh. Marcus, there can't be more than a few $1,000s and some personal effects. Surely we don't need a formal reading for something so simple. Marcus's expression never changed. Mrs. Brennan's instructions were very specific. She wanted certain matters addressed in a particular way. I'm simply following her wishes. After he walked away, I heard Gregory mutter to Diane. Probably running up legal fees for nothing. Catherine always did have delusions of grandeur. That night, I sat alone in Mom's small house, surrounded by her things. The place felt enormous and empty without her presence. I'd been staying here for the past week, taking time off from my job at the coffee shop to handle the funeral arrangements. Well, to be honest, Marcus had handled most of the arrangements. I'd just shown up where he told me to and signed what he put in front of me. I wandered through the rooms, looking at everything with new eyes. The house was clean and comfortable but deliberately plain. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. The furniture was good quality but simple. The decorations were minimal. It was the home of someone who lived carefully, someone who didn't want to attract attention. But now I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The laptop on Mom's desk was a high-end model, probably $2,000 new, though she'd covered it with discount store stickers. Her closet held mostly simple clothes, but pushed to the very back were 3 designer suits in protective bags, the kind of outfits you wore to important business meetings. Her bookshelf was filled with real estate investment guides, property law textbooks, and business strategy books alongside the mystery novels she claimed to read. How had I never seen this before? How had I lived in this house my entire life and missed all the signs? I opened her desk drawer and found a folder labeled for Claire. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Mom's handwriting. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're probably confused and hurting and maybe a little angry with me for keeping secrets. I need you to understand that everything I did, every choice I made, was to protect you and give you a future your father and I dreamed of. The family never understood me. They saw what they wanted to see, and I let them because their ignorance was useful. While they laughed at the poor property manager, I was building something real, something that couldn't be taken away by their judgment or their conditional love. Marcus Way knows everything. Trust him completely. He's been my partner and friend for 15 years, and he'll make sure you get everything that's rightfully yours. But more than that, he'll help you understand why I did things this way. Tomorrow will be difficult. The family is going to react badly when they learn the truth. Stay calm, stay dignified, and remember that you never have to accept their scraps again. You are my daughter, and you are capable of incredible things. Don't let anyone make you feel small ever again. I love you more than words can express. Now go show them who you really are. All my love, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. What truth? What was I going to learn tomorrow that would make the family react badly? Mom had never lied to me, but it was clear now that she'd hidden enormous parts of her life. The question was why, and what happened when those secrets came to light. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I kept replaying moments from my childhood, conversations I'd half forgotten, times when Mom had seemed distracted or preoccupied. There was the summer I was 10 when she disappeared for 2 weeks on what she called a work emergency. The year I turned 16 when she sat me down and explained very seriously that I needed to learn to be independent, to never rely on family money or family connections. The countless times she'd warned me about Uncle Gregory, about keeping my distance from the Brennan family social circle. She'd been preparing me for something, and I'd been too young or too naive to see it. Morning came too soon. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I dressed carefully in the same borrowed black dress, wishing I had something better but refusing to ask the family for help. Marcus had texted me the night before with the address and a simple message. Be strong. Your mother was brilliant, and so are you. Morrison and Associates occupied the top floor of a sleek glass building downtown. The reception area was all marble and leather, the kind of place that charged $500 an hour just to answer the phone. The receptionist directed me to a large conference room where the family was already gathering. Gregory and Diane sat at one end of the polished table, looking impatient. Russell, their son, was scrolling through his phone with a bored expression. Aunt Beatrice had claimed a seat near the head of the table, her designer handbag placed prominently on the surface like a territorial marker. A few cousins I barely knew had shown up, probably hoping for some small bequest. They all looked up when I entered, and I saw the same expression on every face. Pity mixed with superiority, the look you give someone you've already dismissed as irrelevant. Claire dear, Beatrice said in that sugary voice she used when she wanted to seem kind. I'm surprised you came. Estate readings can be so tedious, and it's not like there's much to distribute. You could have just waited for Marcus to send you whatever small items your mother left you. I wanted to be here, I said quietly, taking a seat at the opposite end of the table from Gregory. Of course you did, Diane said, and there was something nasty in her smile. It's only natural to hope for something, even when we know better. Before I could respond, the door opened and Marcus entered, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that seemed to assess everyone in the room instantly. Good morning everyone, Marcus said, taking his place at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming. This is Helen Kovac, senior partner at Morrison and Associates and the executor of Catherine Brennan's estate. Helen set a leather portfolio on the table and looked around the room with an expression that gave nothing away. Before we begin, I need to confirm who we have present. She went around the table, checking names against her list. When she was satisfied, she nodded to Marcus. The reading of Catherine and Brennan's last will and testament will now commence, Helen said formally. I want to make clear from the outset that Mrs. Brennan was very specific in her instructions. She anticipated certain reactions and made arrangements accordingly. I ask that everyone remain seated and allow me to finish reading the entire document before any questions or comments. Gregory waved his hand dismissively. Yes, let's get on with it. Some of us have actual business to attend to today. Helen's expression hardened slightly, but she opened the portfolio and began to read. I, Catherine and Brennan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. Standard language followed about funeral arrangements and outstanding debts. The family members shifted in their seats, already looking bored. This was clearly going to be as anticlimactic as they expected. Then Helen's voice took on a different tone, and I saw Marcus sit up straighter. To my beloved daughter Claire Elizabeth Brennan, I leave the entirety of my estate, consisting of but not limited to the following assets. The room went very still. The complete ownership of Waypoint Hospitality Group, a privately held corporation operating 16 boutique hotels across Oregon, Texas, and Colorado, with an estimated current value of $47 million. Someone gasped. I think it might have been me. Helen continued reading as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of the conference room. The complete real estate portfolio consisting of 23 residential and commercial properties in 7 states, with a combined estimated value of $19 million. The investment portfolio held by Sterling Investments, with a current value of approximately $12 million. The art collection currently held in storage at Whitmore Fine Arts, valued at $3.2 million. The vintage automobile collection, valued at $1.8 million. This is ridiculous. Gregory stood up, his face flushing red. This is obviously a mistake. My sister managed apartments for a living. She didn't own hotels. She couldn't possibly have accumulated this kind of wealth. Helen looked at him with cool professionalism. Mr. Brennan, I asked everyone to remain seated and allow me to finish. If you cannot comply with that simple request, I'll have to ask you to leave. Gregory sat back down, but his hands were clenched into fists on the table. Helen returned to the document. Additionally, Claire Elizabeth Brennan will receive all personal effects, the family home and its contents, and all remaining liquid assets in various bank accounts totaling approximately $2.3 million. The total estimated value of the estate is $85.6 million, subject to applicable taxes and final valuations. The room exploded. This is fraud, Beatrice shouted, her composed demeanor completely shattered. Catherine couldn't have hidden this kind of money. Someone helped her, someone manipulated her. She probably stole it, Diane added, her voice shaking. Property managers have access to other people's money. She must have embezzled from her employers. Russell was staring at his phone, frantically searching something. Dad, Waypoint Hospitality is real. They have a website. They own the Riverside Inn in Portland and the Gateway Hotel in Austin. These are legitimate, high-end properties. Gregory turned to Marcus with fury in his eyes. You helped her hide this. You helped my sister commit fraud against her own family. We had a right to know about her assets. We could have provided guidance, oversight. Mrs. Brennan built her business entirely through legal means, Marcus said calmly. Every dollar was earned, invested, and managed according to all applicable laws. She chose to keep her success private, which was her absolute right. Private? Gregory's voice rose to a shout. She let us think she was barely scraping by. She let us pity her, offer her charity, while she was secretly a multimillionaire. That's not privacy, that's deception. I found my voice finally, though it came out quieter than I intended. Why would she tell you? So you could take credit for her success? So you could try to control her business decisions? So you could treat her the way you've treated everyone who didn't fit your image of what the Brennan family should be? Everyone turned to look at me, and I felt a surge of something I'd never experienced before. Not anger exactly, but a kind of crystalline clarity. My mother had built an empire while they mocked her, had provided me with a future beyond anything they could imagine, and she'd done it all while they were too blind and too arrogant to see what was right in front of them. Helen held up her hand for silence. There's more. Mrs. Brennan included several personal letters to be distributed to family members. She wanted certain things said directly. She pulled out sealed envelopes and began distributing them. Gregory and Beatrice both received one. Diane got one. Even Russell had an envelope with his name on it. Each person tore theirs open immediately, and I watched their faces change as they read Mom's words. Gregory's face went from red to pale. His hands trembled as he held the single page. What does yours say? Diane whispered to him. Gregory crumpled the letter and threw it on the table. She's telling me exactly what she thinks of how I ran the family business into the ground. She's listing every condescending comment I ever made about her career, every time I excluded her from family decisions. She's throwing my own words back at me. Beatrice was crying, actual tears running down her carefully made-up face. She remembered everything. Every slight, every dismissal, every time we made her feel less than. She wrote it all down. Helen's voice cut through the chaos. Mrs. Brennan wanted her family to understand that success doesn't always look the way you expect it to. She wanted you to know that while you were judging her, she was building something remarkable. And she wanted to make absolutely clear that her daughter Claire will never need anything from any of you ever again. The words hung in the air like a benediction and a curse all at once. I have one more document to read, Helen continued. This is a letter Mrs. Brennan wrote specifically for this moment, to be read aloud at the estate reading. She unfolded another page and began. To my family, if you're hearing this, you're probably shocked and possibly angry. Good. You should be uncomfortable. For 20 years, you treated me like a failure because I chose a different path than the one you approved of. You offered me your pity and your charity while secretly feeling superior. You made my daughter feel poor and less than because she didn't have your designer labels and country club memberships. Helen paused, letting the words sink in. I could have told you the truth at any time, the letter continued. I could have thrown my success in your faces and demanded your respect. But I chose not to, because I wanted to teach Claire something far more valuable than how to impress people with money. I wanted her to understand that true worth comes from what you build, not what you inherit. That real security comes from your own efforts, not from family connections. That the opinions of people who judge you based on appearances are worthless. Gregory stood up again. I don't have to listen to this character assassination from beyond the grave. Then leave, Marcus said coldly. No one is forcing you to stay. But you should know that Mrs. Brennan also included video documentation of this reading in her instructions. Everything being said here today will be preserved, along with all of your reactions. She wanted a record of this moment. I saw a camera mounted discreetly in the corner of the room, its red light blinking steadily. Gregory sat back down. Claire, Helen read from Mom's letter, you are about to inherit great wealth, but that's not really what I'm leaving you. I'm leaving you freedom. Freedom from ever having to tolerate these people's judgment. Freedom to build your own life on your own terms. Freedom to be generous when you choose to be, not because someone made you feel obligated. My vision blurred with tears. To the rest of my family, Mom's letter concluded, I forgive you for your small-mindedness, your casual cruelty, and your complete lack of interest in who I really was. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean consequences disappear. You spent 2 decades treating my daughter and me like charity cases. Now you'll spend the rest of your lives knowing that the poor relation you pitted could have bought and sold everything you have 10 times over. I hope that knowledge keeps you awake at night. Goodbye, and good luck with your own lives. You're going to need it. The silence that followed was absolute. No one seemed to know where to look or what to say. Beatrice was still crying quietly. Diane looked like she might be sick. Russell was staring at the table with his mouth slightly open. Gregory's hands were shaking. Helen closed the portfolio. That concludes the formal reading. Mr. Way will be handling all administrative matters related to the estate transfer. Miss Brennan, if you'll stay behind, we have some documents for you to review and sign. The family filed out slowly, none of them looking at me or each other. Gregory paused at the door and turned back, his face a mask of controlled rage. This isn't over, Claire. There are laws about hidden assets, about fraud. We'll be contacting our attorneys. Feel free, Marcus said before I could respond. Every single transaction, every business dealing, every asset acquisition is fully documented and completely legal. Mrs. Brennan was meticulous about maintaining perfect records specifically because she anticipated this reaction. You're welcome to waste money on lawyers, but I promise you'll find nothing actionable. After they left, I sat alone with Marcus and Helen in the suddenly quiet conference room. The weight of what had just happened was starting to settle on my shoulders like a physical thing. Are you all right? Marcus asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Is this real? Did my mother really build all of this? She did. Marcus pulled a tablet from his briefcase and opened a presentation. Let me show you what she created. For the next hour, he walked me through Mom's business empire. She'd started small 20 years ago, buying a struggling apartment building with money she'd saved from her job. She renovated it, increased its value, and sold it for a profit. She did it again with another property, then another. Eventually, she partnered with Marcus, who handled the legal and financial structures while she focused on identifying undervalued properties and transforming them. 10 years ago, she pivoted to boutique hotels, seeing an opportunity in the market for smaller, high-end properties that offered personalized service. Waypoint Hospitality Group was born, and it grew steadily, carefully, profitably. She reinvested everything, living modestly to avoid attention while her portfolio expanded. Why didn't she tell me? I asked. I could have helped, or at least understood what she was doing. She wanted you to have a normal childhood, Marcus explained. She didn't want you growing up with the burden of knowing about all this money, or the fear that people might try to take advantage of you. And she wanted you to develop your own strength, your own identity, separate from wealth. She succeeded, Helen added. You're one of the most grounded young women I've ever met, especially considering what you're inheriting. What do I do now? The question came out small and lost. Marcus smiled. Whatever you want, Claire. That's the whole point. Your mother gave you choices. You can continue running the business, though I'd recommend hiring experienced managers to help you learn. You can sell everything and pursue whatever dreams you have. You can use the money for philanthropy, or education, or travel. The world is open to you in a way it wasn't yesterday. I thought about Mom's letter, about her emphasis on freedom and choices. She'd spent 20 years building this, enduring the family's contempt and pity, all so I could have options she never had. I want to learn the business, I said, surprised by the certainty in my own voice. I want to understand what she built and why she loved it. But I also want to do something she'd be proud of. She was already proud of you, Marcus said softly. She told me that constantly. You were the reason for everything she did. As I left Morrison and Associates that morning, stepping out into the weak November sunlight, I felt like a different person than the one who'd entered. The family's words from the funeral echoed in my head. Poor thing can't even afford proper funeral attire. Let them think what they wanted. Let them stew in their shock and embarrassment. My mother had taught me the most valuable lesson anyone could learn. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. Real worth doesn't require validation from people too shallow to recognize it. And real love means giving someone not just money, but the strength to handle it wisely. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last text Mom had sent me, 3 days before she died. Remember, sweetheart, you're stronger than you know. Trust yourself, and trust Marcus. Everything is going to be all right. She'd been saying goodbye, and I'd been too distracted to realize it. But she'd also been telling me hello. Hello to the life she'd prepared for me, to the future she'd secured, to the person she'd raised me to become. I walked to my car, my borrowed dress and leaking shoes suddenly feeling like armor rather than shame. Tomorrow I would start learning about hotels and real estate and investment portfolios. Tomorrow I would begin the process of becoming whoever I was meant to be with $85 million and a lifetime of my mother's wisdom to guide me. But today, I would go home to Mom's small, deliberately modest house and read through every document she'd left me, every piece of her hidden life she'd finally revealed. The family had called me poor at the funeral. They'd pitted the girl in the cheap dress with wet feet. They had no idea that I'd just inherited more than most of them would see in 3 lifetimes combined. And that was exactly how Mom had planned it. The house felt different when I returned that afternoon. Every corner held secrets I was just beginning to understand. I made myself tea in Mom's favorite mug, the chipped blue one she'd refused to replace despite being able to afford 1,000 replacements. Now I understood why she kept it. It wasn't about the money. It was about remembering where she came from and what really mattered. I spread the documents Marcus had given me across the dining room table. Property deeds, business incorporation papers, financial statements going back 15 years. Each page told a story of careful planning and remarkable vision. Mom hadn't just gotten lucky or stumbled into wealth. She'd built an empire one strategic decision at a time. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members. I ignored most of them, but Uncle Gregory's voicemail was impossible to delete without listening. His voice shook with barely controlled fury as he spoke. "Claire, we need to discuss this situation like adults. Your mother clearly wasn't in her right mind toward the end. No rational person hides this kind of wealth from their family. I've already spoken with our attorneys, and they believe we have grounds to challenge the will on the basis of mental incompetence and undue influence from that Marcus Way character. Call me back immediately so we can resolve this without destroying the family." I deleted the message and blocked his number. If he wanted to waste money on lawyers, that was his choice. Mom had anticipated every move they might make, and Marcus had assured me the estate was bulletproof. Tommy Chin called around 6 that evening. He'd been my best friend since middle school, one of the few people who never treated me differently because of my family's attitude toward Mom and me. "Claire, I just heard the craziest rumor. Someone at my firm said your mom owned Waypoint Hospitality. Please tell me that's not true, because if it is and you didn't tell me, I'm going to be seriously offended." I laughed for the first time in days. "It's true. I found out this morning at the estate reading. Tommy, she had almost $90 million and never said a word to anyone." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Tommy? You still there?" "Holy shit," he finally said. "Claire, that's insane. Your mom was a secret millionaire this whole time? How is that even possible?" "She was very good at keeping secrets," I said softly. "And very good at letting people underestimate her." Tommy came over an hour later with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on Mom's worn couch, the same one I'd grown up curling up on for movie nights, and he listened while I explained everything. The hidden business empire, the carefully maintained facade of modest living, the devastating letters she'd left for each family member. "Your mom was a stone-cold badass," Tommy said with genuine admiration. "She spent 20 years letting them think they were better than her, and then she dropped a bomb that's going to haunt them forever. That's not revenge, that's art." "She didn't do it for revenge though." I picked at my low mane, thinking about Mom's letter. "She did it to teach me something. She wanted me to understand that their opinions never mattered in the first place." Mission accomplished. Tommy raised his wine glass. "To Catherine Brennan, who played the long game better than anyone." We clinked glasses, and I felt a rush of gratitude for having at least one person in my life who understood what this meant beyond just the money. The next morning, I met Marcus at the Waypoint Hospitality headquarters in Portland. I'd flown out on a red-eye, unable to sleep in the house with all those documents staring at me. Marcus had arranged everything, including a suite at the Riverside Inn, one of Mom's flagship properties. The building was a converted warehouse in the Pearl District, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. The lobby featured artwork from local artists and a coffee bar that served drinks made from beans roasted in-house. Everything about it screamed attention to detail and genuine care for the guest experience. "Your mother designed most of this herself," Marcus explained as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. "She believed that luxury wasn't about being expensive or exclusive. It was about making people feel valued and cared for. Every Waypoint property reflects that philosophy." The executive suite took up half the top floor. Floor plans and design mock-ups covered one wall. Another wall displayed photographs of all 16 properties. Mom's office sat in the corner, still exactly as she'd left it. I stood in the doorway, unable to make myself enter. Her coffee mug sat on the desk. Her reading glasses were folded on top of a stack of reports. A framed photo of the two of us from my high school graduation sat next to her computer monitor. "Take your time," Marcus said gently. "There's no rush for any of this." I finally stepped inside and sank into her desk chair. The leather was worn in places from years of use. I opened her top drawer and found neat rows of pens, sticky notes, and a leather journal. I pulled out the journal and opened it to a random page. "Claire turns 18 today. I took her to dinner at that Italian place she loves, the one where we split the tiramisu. She has no idea that I own the building the restaurant is in, or that I could buy her anything she wanted. But what I love most is that she doesn't need expensive things to be happy. She's grateful for small moments, genuine connections, simple pleasures. I did something right raising her. Tears blurred my vision as I flipped through more entries. Page after page of Mom's thoughts, observations about the business, notes about properties she was considering, and scattered throughout it all, entries about me. My successes, my struggles, my dreams. She documented our life together from her perspective, and reading it felt like having one more conversation with her. Marcus knocked softly on the doorframe. The management team is assembled in the conference room when you're ready. No pressure, but they're eager to meet Catherine's daughter. I closed the journal carefully and took a deep breath. What do I say to them? I don't know anything about running hotels. You don't have to know everything today. Marcus smiled. Your mother didn't know much when she started either. She learned by asking questions and surrounding herself with people who complemented her skills. That's what made her successful, not some innate knowledge of the hospitality industry. The conference room held 12 people, all standing when I entered. Marcus introduced each one. The chief financial officer, the director of operations, the head of design and renovation, the marketing director. Each person had worked with Mom for years, some since the very beginning of Waypoint. Miss Brennan, the CFO said, extending his hand. I'm David Park. Your mother was an exceptional woman and a brilliant businessperson. We're all devastated by her loss, but we're committed to honoring her legacy and supporting you however we can. Thank you. I shook hands around the table, seeing genuine grief in many of their faces. I have to be honest with all of you. I don't have experience in this industry. I'm going to need a lot of help and patience as I learn. Catherine said the exact same thing to us when she hired most of us, the operations director said with a warm smile. She told us that being willing to learn was more valuable than pretending to know everything. I think you're going to do just fine. For the next 3 hours, they walked me through the business. Occupancy rates, revenue per available room, customer satisfaction scores, upcoming renovation projects. My head spun with information, but I forced myself to focus and ask questions when I didn't understand something. During a break, the design director, a woman named Sarah Olson, pulled me aside. I want you to know that your mother talked about you constantly. She was so proud of how grounded you were, how you worked your way through college, how you treated people with kindness regardless of their status. She used to say that raising you was her greatest accomplishment, more important than any property or profit margin. The words hit me hard. Did she ever say why she kept all this secret from me? Sarah nodded. She said she wanted you to develop your own identity and values separate from wealth. She was terrified that if you grew up knowing about the money, you'd become like her family. Entitled, shallow, more concerned with status than substance. She thought the only way to prevent that was to let you experience real struggle, real work, real limitations. It broke her heart sometimes, especially when she saw you wearing second-hand clothes or working 2 jobs to pay for books. But she believed it was necessary. Was she right? I asked. Was it worth it? Look at who you are, Sarah said simply. You walked in here today and introduced yourself to every member of the facility's staff by name. You thanked the receptionist for the coffee she brought you. You listened to our presentations with genuine interest instead of pretending you already knew everything. Yes, Claire. She was right. That evening, Marcus took me to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. The place was elegant but not pretentious, with a menu that featured local ingredients and seasonal dishes. It reminded me of Mom's philosophy about luxury being about quality and care rather than showing off. How are you feeling? Marcus asked after we'd ordered. Overwhelmed. Grateful. Terrified. I laughed shakily. Is it normal to feel all of those at once? Completely normal. He buttered a piece of bread, taking his time before continuing. Your mother felt the same way when she started building this company. She used to call me at midnight full of self-doubt, wondering if she was making huge mistakes. But she pushed through the fear because she had something driving her forward. Me, I said quietly. You were part of it, but not all of it. Marcus met my eyes across the table. Catherine wanted to prove something to herself. She wanted to show that she could succeed on her own terms, without the family name or connections or approval. She wanted to build something that mattered, something that reflected her values. You were the reason she worked so hard, but the work itself gave her purpose and fulfillment. Did she ever talk about telling the family? About showing them what she'd accomplished? Many times, especially toward the end. She drafted versions of letters she wanted to send to Gregory, to Beatrice, to all of them. But she always stopped herself. She said that needing their validation would give them power over her again, and she'd spent too many years breaking free from that. So the estate reading, having her letter read out loud with everyone watching, that was her compromise? Marcus smiled. That was her final lesson to them and to you. She wanted them to understand what they'd missed by being too blind and arrogant to see her clearly. But more importantly, she wanted you to see their reactions. To watch them realize they'd been wrong about her for decades. She thought that moment would free you from ever caring what they thought again. Our food arrived, and we ate in comfortable silence for a while. The restaurant hummed with conversation around us, normal people living normal lives. 24 hours ago, I'd been one of them. Now I was the heir to a hospitality empire, dining with my mother's business partner while discussing properties worth millions of dollars. What would Mom want me to do with all this? I finally asked. Keep running the business? Sell it and do something else? I don't even know where to start. She left you detailed letters about that too. Marcus pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. She wrote these over the past few months, updated them regularly as her condition worsened. They're organized by topic. Running the business, selling the business, philanthropy, personal finance, family relationships. She tried to give you guidance for whatever path you choose. I took the folder but didn't open it yet. The weight of it in my hands felt like Mom herself, still trying to guide me even though she was gone. There's one more thing, Marcus said carefully. Your mother established a trust that makes substantial donations to various charities. Women's shelters, job training programs, college scholarships for low-income students. She wanted to help people who reminded her of herself and you. People who were underestimated and overlooked but had tremendous potential. How much are we talking about? $5 million a year, distributed across about 30 different organizations. She'd been doing it quietly for the past decade. Most of the recipients have no idea who funded their programs. Of course she didn't tell them. I smiled through tears. She never wanted credit for anything. She wanted impact, not recognition. Marcus signaled for the check. That's a distinction a lot of wealthy people never understand. Back at the Riverside Inn, I finally opened Mom's folder of letters. Each one was dated and signed, her handwriting as familiar as my own heartbeat. I started with the one labeled, "If you decide to run Waypoint." My darling Claire, if you're reading this letter, you've decided to continue what I started. I'm so glad. Not because I need you to preserve my legacy, that kind of ego-driven thinking is exactly what I spent my life avoiding. I'm glad because it means you found something meaningful in what I built, something worth your time and energy and passion. Running a business this size will be challenging. You'll make mistakes, and that's not just okay, it's necessary. I made countless mistakes. I overpaid for properties, hired the wrong people, launched marketing campaigns that flopped. But I learned from each failure, adjusted my approach, and moved forward. That's the real secret to success, not avoiding mistakes but learning from them faster than your competitors do. Trust Marcus completely. He's been my partner in every sense except romantic, and he'll be your greatest advocate and advisor. Listen to the team I assembled. They're brilliant people who genuinely care about Waypoint's mission. And most importantly, trust yourself. You have better instincts than you realize. Don't let the family's skepticism or criticism affect your decisions. They'll say you're too young, too inexperienced, that you'll ruin everything I built. They said the same things about me, and they were wrong then just as they're wrong now. The only opinion that matters is your own and the results you produce. Remember that Waypoint isn't just about making money, though profit is necessary to sustain the mission. It's about creating spaces where people feel valued and cared for. Where a family on their first vacation gets treated with the same respect as a business executive on an expense account. Where our employees feel appreciated and supported, not just used for their labor. If you keep that philosophy at the center of every decision, you'll do fine. I love you more than the stars love the night sky. You've always been and will always be my greatest joy. Build something wonderful, or don't. Either way, I'm proud of you. All my love, Mom. I read through the other letters too. The one about selling the business if I decided the responsibility was too much. The one about using the wealth for philanthropy and social impact. The one about handling family dynamics, which included very specific advice about maintaining boundaries with Gregory and the others. Each letter showed me a different facet of who Mom had been. Strategic and thoughtful, yes, but also warm and encouraging. She'd anticipated my fears and doubts and addressed them directly, giving me permission to forge my own path while offering her wisdom as a guide. Sleep came easier that night than it had in weeks. I dreamed of Mom walking through the riverside and lobby, stopping to chat with guests and staff, her smile genuine and her presence calming. In the dream, she turned to me and said, "See? This is what it's all about. Making people feel at home even when they're far from home." I woke with the dream still vivid in my mind and a clarity I hadn't felt before. I knew what I wanted to do. Marcus met me for breakfast in the hotel restaurant, and I told him my decision. I want to run Waypoint, at least for now. I want to learn everything Mom knew and understand why she loved this work. But I also want to expand the foundation, increase the charitable giving. Mom helped 30 organizations. I want to help 300. Marcus's smile was genuine and proud. Catherine would have loved that. She always said she wished she could do more but was limited by needing to reinvest profits for growth. You have the freedom to do both now. I also want to do something about the family. Not revenge, exactly, but I want them to understand that their behavior has consequences. Mom left them letters, but I think there's more that needs to be said. What did you have in mind? Over the next hour, I outlined my plan. Marcus listened carefully, asking questions and suggesting refinements. By the time we finished, we had a strategy that felt true to Mom's values while also standing up for myself in a way she would have respected. The implementation started that afternoon. Marcus sent formal letters to each family member from Morrison and Associates. The letters detailed Mom's complete business history, including specific instances where family members had belittled or dismissed her work. Each letter included documentation showing exactly how successful she'd been during the periods they were mocking her. But the letters went further. They outlined new policies I was establishing regarding family interactions. No more surprise visits or demands for my time. No more expectations of financial support or loans. No more critiques of my choices or lifestyle. Anyone who couldn't respect these boundaries would be cut off completely, not just from access to me but from any family functions I chose to host in the future. The responses came quickly. Gregory called Marcus's office 17 times in one day, each message more desperate than the last. Beatrice sent a long email full of justifications and excuses. Diane tried to reach me through Tommy, not realizing he was absolutely on my side and would never betray my trust. Only one response gave me pause. Russell, Gregory's son, sent a handwritten letter that arrived 3 days after the official communication. Claire, I know I have no right to ask for your time or attention. I participated in the family's treatment of you and your mom, and I'm ashamed of that now. I want you to know that I always thought Aunt Catherine was kind, even when my dad was making fun of her. She used to slip me $20 at family gatherings and tell me to buy something I actually wanted instead of what my parents thought I should want. I never thanked her for that, and now I can't. I'm not asking for money or favors. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and that I think what she accomplished is incredible. I also think you're handling all of this with more grace than any of us deserve. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. Russell I read the letter 3 times, looking for hidden manipulation or ulterior motives. But it seemed genuine, the words of someone who was genuinely reflecting on his own behavior. I filed it away without responding yet, but I didn't throw it out either. 2 weeks after the estate reading, I returned to Riverside for the first time since the funeral. The town looked the same, the historic downtown with its brick storefronts and tree-lined streets. But I felt completely different walking through it. I wasn't the poor relation anymore, the girl everyone pitied. I was Catherine Brennan's daughter, and I finally understood what that really meant. I drove past the Brennan family compound on Maple Ridge Drive, the sprawling estates where Gregory and Beatrice lived in houses their grandfather had built. For years, those houses had represented everything I couldn't have, everything the family used to remind me of my place in their hierarchy. Now they just looked like houses. Nice ones, certainly, but nothing special. Nothing that couldn't be bought by someone with means and desire. The power they'd held over me was gone, dissolved by the knowledge that Mom had succeeded beyond anything they'd accomplished while they were too busy sneering to notice. I met Tommy for coffee at the place where I used to work. My former co-workers greeted me with a mix of curiosity and awkwardness. News of my inheritance had spread through Riverside like wildfire, and everyone suddenly wanted to be my friend or get my advice or pitch me their business ideas. This is weird, I told Tommy after the third person stopped by our table to congratulate me. Everyone's treating me differently, and I'm the same person I was 3 weeks ago. You're not though, Tommy said gently. You're still you, but you have options now that you didn't have before. People respond to that, even when they don't mean to. It's going to take time to figure out who's genuinely in your corner versus who just wants something from you. How do I tell the difference? Trust your instincts. You've always been good at reading people. Don't let the money make you doubt that. Father Paul Hendricks asked to meet me at St. Andrew's Chapel, the same place where we'd held Mom's funeral. I found him in the small garden behind the church, tending to roses that were preparing for winter dormancy. Claire, thank you for coming. He straightened up, brushing dirt from his hands. I wanted to speak with you away from the family drama. Did you know about Mom's business? He smiled. Catherine and I spoke regularly. She needed someone to talk to about the burden of maintaining her secret, the guilt she felt about not giving you more material things, the fear that she was making the wrong choice. I listened and offered what guidance I could, but mostly I just reminded her that her intentions were pure and her love for you was evident in everything she did. We sat on a wooden bench overlooking the garden. The November air was crisp but not uncomfortable. She struggled with it more than you might think, Father Paul continued. Every time the family made a cruel comment or you had to work extra hours to afford textbooks, it hurt her. But she believed so strongly that the struggle would make you stronger, more compassionate, more grounded. She thought that growing up with wealth would rob you of something essential. Was she right? I think so. Father Paul looked at me kindly. You could have become bitter and entitled, focused on what you didn't have instead of what you did. Instead, you became generous and hardworking, grateful for small kindnesses and unwilling to look down on anyone. That's Catherine's real legacy, not the hotels or money. The family thinks she was cruel to hide the truth from me. The family is projecting their own values onto Catherine's choices. They can't imagine having wealth and not flaunting it because status and appearance are everything to them. Catherine knew that real character is built through challenge and that true security comes from within. She gave you both challenge and security, just at different times in your life. What should I do now? How do I honor what she built while still being true to myself? Father Paul stood and plucked a rose that was wilting, its petals beginning to fall. You already know the answer, Claire. You felt it the moment you decided to run Waypoint. You honor her by staying true to the values she instilled in you, by using your resources to help others, by refusing to let wealth change who you are at your core. The specifics will work themselves out. As I drove away from St. Andrew's, I passed the cemetery where Mom was buried. I pulled over on impulse and walked to her grave. The headstone was simple, just her name and dates. Nothing about her accomplishments or wealth. Just Catherine and Brennan, beloved mother. I sat in the grass beside her grave, not caring that the cold ground soaked through my jeans. "Hi, Mom. I'm figuring it out, slowly. The business is overwhelming, but the team is incredible and patient with me. I'm learning about RevPAR and occupancy rates and guest satisfaction metrics. You would laugh at how much I still don't know." A breeze rustled through the bare trees overhead. "The family is exactly as angry as you predicted. Gregory's threatening lawsuits he'll never win. Beatrice is telling everyone who'll listen that you must have been mentally ill to hide so much money. Diane keeps trying to reach me through intermediaries. But I'm holding the boundaries you taught me about. I'm not engaging with their drama." I pulled a few dead leaves away from the base of the headstone. "I miss you so much. I miss calling you after work to tell you about my day. I miss our Sunday morning pancakes and terrible reality TV marathons. I miss the way you'd hum while doing dishes, always slightly off-key. I miss having you in the world. But I'm also so grateful, Mom. Grateful for the life you gave me, for the lessons you taught me, for the empire you built while everyone was too blind to see it. You showed me that strength doesn't have to be loud, that success doesn't have to be announced, that love sometimes means letting someone struggle so they can learn to stand on their own. I promise I'll make you proud. I'll run Waypoint with integrity. I'll help people who need it. I'll stay true to who you raised me to be, no matter how much money is in my bank account. And I'll never, ever let the family make me feel small again." The wind picked up, and for just a moment, I could have sworn I smelled Mom's perfume, that light floral scent she always wore. I knew it was impossible, just my imagination finding comfort where it could. But I smiled anyway and whispered one more time, "Thank you for everything." When I stood to leave, I felt lighter somehow. The grief was still there, would probably always be there in some form. But underneath it was a foundation of gratitude and determination. Mom had given me more than money. She'd given me a roadmap for how to live with integrity, how to succeed without losing yourself, how to lift others up while standing tall yourself. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed with an email from Marcus. The subject line read, "New property opportunity. Portland waterfront location. Needs major renovation but has incredible potential. Thought you might want to review." I opened the attachment and saw photos of a gorgeous but neglected building right on the river. My mind immediately started spinning with possibilities. A rooftop restaurant featuring local chefs. A partnership with nearby art galleries for rotating exhibitions in the lobby. Guest rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. I was thinking like Mom, seeing potential where others saw problems, imagining how to transform something overlooked into something special. I replied to Marcus, "Let's schedule a site visit. I want to see it in person." Then I drove back toward Portland, toward Waypoint headquarters, toward the future Mom had built and I was now shaping. The road stretched out ahead of me, full of unknowns and possibilities. For the first time since she died, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The Portland waterfront property exceeded every expectation I'd built during the drive over. Marcus had arranged for us to meet the current owner, an elderly man named Vincent Russo who'd operated a small marina and boat repair shop on the site for 40 years. His weathered hands shook slightly as he unlocked the main building, and I noticed he avoided looking directly at the peeling paint and cracked windows. "My kids want me to sell to some developer who'll tear everything down and put up condos," Vincent explained as we walked through the cavernous space. "But this place has history. My father built it after the war. We had birthday parties here, wedding receptions, community gatherings. I know it needs work, but it deserves better than a wrecking ball." I ran my hand along the exposed brick wall, feeling the texture of decades beneath my fingers. The bones of the building were solid, and the location was unbeatable. Through the grimy windows, the Willamette River sparkled in the afternoon light. I could already envision what this space could become. What if someone promised to preserve the structure and honor its history? I asked carefully. "Would that matter to you?" Vincent's eyes, faded blue behind thick glasses, finally met mine. "You're Catherine Brennan's daughter. Marcus told me. Your mother bought the Riverside Inn when everyone else wanted to demolish it and build a parking garage. She saved that building because she saw what it could be, not just what it was. I didn't know that story, I admitted. She understood that some places have souls, Vincent continued. They hold memories and meaning beyond their monetary value. If you're anything like her, then yes, it would matter to me who bought this place. We spent 2 hours walking every floor, Vincent pointing out original details worth preserving and problem areas that needed addressing. The old marina office on the ground floor still had vintage nautical charts on the walls. The second floor held massive windows that flooded the space with natural light. The third floor had exposed beam ceilings that would be stunning once restored. Marcus took notes and photographs while I asked Vincent questions about the building's history, the neighborhood changes over the years, and his vision for what the space could become. His answers revealed a man who'd spent his life in service of this place and these waters, who measured success in satisfied customers and community connections rather than profit margins. How much are the developers offering? I finally asked as we stood on the rooftop, looking out over the river and city skyline. 2.3 million. They want to close in 30 days. Vincent's voice was heavy with resignation. I can't say no much longer. My wife needs medical care that Medicare doesn't fully cover, and our savings are gone. But signing those papers feels like betraying everything my father built. I looked at Marcus, who gave me a slight nod. We discussed budget parameters on the drive over. This property fell well within what Waypoint could afford, especially considering its potential. What if I offered you $2.5 million with a 60-day closing, I said slowly, working through the numbers in my head. Plus a contract that legally obligates us to preserve the building's structure and original architectural features. And a position as our historical consultant during renovation, paid at whatever rate you think is fair for your expertise and knowledge. Vincent's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought I'd offended him. Then I realized he was crying. Young lady, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You're more like your mother than you probably realize. The purchase process moved quickly once Vincent accepted the offer. Marcus connected me with architects who specialized in historic renovation, and we began developing plans that would transform the marina into a boutique hotel while preserving its character and soul. The ground floor would house the lobby and a restaurant featuring Pacific Northwest cuisine. The upper floors would hold 50 guest rooms, each with river views and design elements that honored the building's maritime history. I threw myself into the project with an intensity that surprised me. Days blurred together as I learned about historic preservation tax credits, sustainable building materials, and the complicated bureaucracy of waterfront development permits. The Waypoint team provided guidance and expertise, but they let me lead, let me make decisions and learn from the outcomes. 3 weeks into the renovation planning, Gregory showed up at the Waypoint offices unannounced. Security called my assistant to ask if I'd see him, and after a long pause, I agreed. Avoiding him forever wasn't realistic, and part of me was curious what he could possibly want after the devastation of the estate reading. He looked diminished somehow when he entered my office. Still wearing expensive clothes and projecting confidence, but there was something hollow in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Claire, thank you for seeing me. He sat down without being invited, a habit that would have annoyed me before but now just seemed sad. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. The things I said about your mother over the years were wrong. I see that now. I leaned back in my chair, the same chair Mom had sat in countless times, and waited. Gregory clearly had a speech prepared, and I was willing to let him deliver it before responding. I'd been thinking a lot about why Catherine felt the need to hide her success from the family. At first, I was just angry and embarrassed. But my therapist helped me understand that my reaction proved exactly why she kept it secret. I made her success about me, about how it made me look, about what I thought I was owed. His self-awareness was surprising, though I remained cautious. Therapy speak was easy. Changed behavior was harder. I spent 20 years belittling my sister's work because it made me feel better about my own mediocre management of the family business. Every joke about her collecting rent from deadbeats was really about my insecurity that she might be more capable than me. And she was. She built something remarkable while I coasted on our grandfather's reputation. What do you want from me, Uncle Gregory? I asked quietly. An apology is meaningless if it comes with expectations. He flinched at the bluntness. I deserve that. I'm not here to ask for money or a position in your company or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I understand why Catherine did what she did, and I'm sorry for my part in making it necessary. I'm sorry for every dismissive comment, every time I treated you like you didn't matter, every moment I made you both feel less than. The apology hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept it gracefully and move forward. But another part, the part that remembered standing in borrowed shoes at Mom's funeral while he whispered about my poverty, wasn't ready to let him off that easily. Do you know what the worst part was? I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. It wasn't the comments about Mom's job or our modest house or my second-hand clothes. It was that you made me believe I was less valuable as a person because I had less money. You taught me that worth was measured in dollars and status symbols and country club memberships. Claire, I never meant to make you feel that way. Yes, you did. That was exactly your intention. You wanted me to feel lesser so you could feel superior. And it worked for a long time. I measured myself against your standards and always came up short. Gregory looked down at his hands, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. But Mom taught me something more valuable than you ever could. She taught me that real success is quiet, that real worth comes from what you build rather than what you inherit, and that people who need to constantly prove their superiority are usually the most insecure. So thank you, actually. Your cruelty helped me appreciate what she was really teaching me. I don't expect you to forgive me, Gregory said after a long silence. I don't forgive myself. But I wanted you to know that I see my mistakes now, and I'm trying to be better. Not for your benefit, but because I can't stand being the person I was. I nodded slowly. That's probably the most honest thing you've ever said to me. After he left, I sat alone in Mom's office for a long time, processing the conversation. His apology felt genuine, but I wasn't ready to trust it yet. Trust had to be earned through consistent behavior over time, not granted based on a single emotional conversation. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Lunch tomorrow? I have news. We met at a Vietnamese restaurant in southeast Portland, one of those tiny places with plastic chairs and incredible food. Tommy looked nervous, which was unusual for him. He normally radiated confidence, but today he kept fidgeting with his chopsticks. Just say it, I finally told him. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I got a job offer in Singapore. It's an incredible opportunity, exactly the kind of international experience I need for my career. But it means leaving Portland for at least 2 years, maybe longer. My first instinct was panic at losing my closest friend, but I pushed it down. This is amazing, Tommy. You've wanted to work in Asia for years. I don't want to abandon you right when you're dealing with all this inheritance stuff and learning to run a company. You need support, and I feel like I'm bailing. You're not bailing. You're pursuing your dreams, which is exactly what you should be doing. I'm going to be fine. Sad that you'll be halfway around the world, but fine. He smiled with relief. You're really okay with this? I'm really okay with this. We clinked our water glasses together. Besides, it'll give me an excuse to visit Singapore and scout potential locations for Waypoint's first international property. Now you're thinking like a real businessperson, Tommy laughed. Turning personal loss into professional opportunity. The conversation shifted to his plans and timeline, but I felt a pang of loneliness underneath my genuine happiness for him. Tommy had been my constant through everything with Mom, the one person who knew me before the money and treated me exactly the same after. Losing that daily presence would be difficult, even if it was temporary and for good reasons. That evening, I returned to Riverside for the first time with a specific purpose rather than just avoiding the past. I decided to host a small gathering at Mom's house, now my house, for the people who'd actually supported her during her life. Vincent Russo, Father Paul, a few of Mom's longtime employees from the early apartment management days, and Sarah Olson from the Waypoint design team. I spent the afternoon preparing, using Mom's recipes to make her favorite dishes. Homemade lasagna, Caesar salad, and the chocolate cake she'd perfected over years of practice. The house smelled like childhood, like safety and love and everything the Brennan family compound had never been. Father Paul arrived first, carrying a bottle of wine and a framed photo I'd never seen before. This was taken at a community fundraiser about 10 years ago, he explained, showing me the image. Catherine donated anonymously to rebuild the church kitchen, but she came to the opening celebration. She looked so happy here. In the photo, Mom was laughing at something off camera, her whole face lit up with genuine joy. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, nothing fancy, but she radiated contentment and purpose. The others arrived over the next half hour, and soon the small house buzzed with conversation and laughter. These people had known Mom as a colleague, a friend, a member of the community rather than the poor relation or secret millionaire. They shared stories I'd never heard about her kindness, her business instincts, her terrible jokes and even worse karaoke performances. Catherine once spent an entire weekend helping me prepare my apartment building for inspection, Vincent's wife Marie said. She didn't have to. We weren't even friends yet, just acquaintances. But she showed up with cleaning supplies and elbow grease because she knew I was overwhelmed. That's who she was. She convinced me to go back to school for interior design, Sarah added. I was working as a receptionist at one of her properties, and she saw me sketching during my lunch breaks. She offered to pay my tuition if I promised to work for Waypoint after graduation. Changed my entire life. Story after story revealed dimensions of Mom I'd known about but never fully appreciated. Her quiet generosity, her ability to see potential in people and properties, her conviction that success meant lifting others up rather than stepping on them to climb higher. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Father Paul pulled me aside. Your mother would be so proud of how you're handling everything. Not just the business, but the way you're honoring her values while forging your own path. I hope so. I watched through the window as Vincent helped Marie into their car. Some days I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not, playing dress up as a businesswoman. Catherine felt that way for years too. Father Paul smiled gently. She used to tell me she was convinced someone would discover she had no idea what she was doing and everything would collapse. But she kept showing up, kept learning, kept trying. Eventually, the confidence caught up with the competence. After everyone left, I cleaned up slowly, savoring the lingering warmth of community and connection. The house felt less empty now, filled with the echoes of laughter and stories. Mom would have loved this evening, bringing together people she cared about in the home she'd built. My phone lit up with an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Interview request, Forbes magazine." My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. Ms. Brennan, we're doing a feature on young entrepreneurs who are disrupting traditional industries. Your inheritance and decision to actively manage Waypoint Hospitality Group rather than selling caught our attention. We'd love to interview you about your vision for the company and your mother's legacy. Please let me know if you'd be interested. I forwarded the email to Marcus with a simple question: should I do this? His response came quickly. Your mother avoided publicity for specific reasons, but you're not her. You get to make your own choices about visibility and platform. The question is whether you want to use your story to accomplish something beyond just running hotels. I thought about it for the rest of the evening, lying in bed in my childhood room surrounded by old photos and memories. Mom had chosen invisibility as protection and strategy. But I had different tools available now, different challenges to face. Maybe there was value in being visible, in showing other young women that they could step into leadership roles even when they felt unprepared. The next morning, I replied to the Forbes reporter. I'd be happy to participate, but I have some conditions. The focus needs to be on my mother's business philosophy and the values that drove Waypoint's success, not on the inheritance drama or family conflict. I want this to be about what she built and why it matters, not tabloid gossip about wealth and estrangement. The reporter agreed immediately, and we scheduled the interview for the following week. Word of the Forbes feature spread quickly, as these things do. I received congratulatory messages from business contacts, curious emails from people I hadn't spoken to in years, and a surprising note from Aunt Beatrice. "Claire, I saw that you're being interviewed by Forbes. That's quite an accomplishment. I wanted to reach out because I've been doing some soul searching since the estate reading, similar to what Gregory described when he visited you. I'm writing a letter to express my thoughts more fully, but I wanted you to know that I'm proud of how you're representing Catherine's legacy. She deserves to be remembered for her brilliance, not just by family but by the business world. You're giving her that recognition, and it's a kindness she never received in life from us." The message was surprisingly gracious, without the usual undertones of superiority or judgment. I didn't respond immediately, needing time to assess whether this represented genuine change or just another manipulation. The interview took place at the waterfront property, which was now fully into renovation. Crews worked around us as the reporter, a sharp woman named Andrea Chen, asked questions about my transition from coffee shop employee to CEO of a hospitality company. "Let's be honest," I said when she asked about imposter syndrome. "I have no formal business training. 6 weeks ago, I was steaming milk and wiping down tables. Now I'm making decisions about millions of dollars in property investments. Of course I feel out of my depth sometimes. But you're doing it anyway," Andrea observed. "Why not sell everything and live off the proceeds? That would be the easier path. Because Mom didn't build Waypoint to give me an easy life. She built it to show me what's possible when you combine vision with hard work and integrity. Selling out would be taking the easy path, yes, but it would also be admitting that I don't believe in what she created. And I do believe in it." Andrea asked about my plans for expansion, my philosophy on employee treatment, my thoughts on sustainable tourism. I answered honestly, acknowledging what I didn't know yet while articulating the values that would guide my decision-making. The interview lasted 3 hours, far longer than originally scheduled, and by the end I felt drained but satisfied. "This is going to be a powerful piece," Andrea said as her photographer took final shots of me standing in front of the riverview. "Your mother's story deserves to be told, and you're the perfect person to tell it." The article published 6 weeks later, coinciding with the grand opening of the renovated waterfront property, which we'd named the Russo House in honor of Vincent's family legacy. The piece was everything I'd hoped for and more, focusing on Mom's business acumen and values-driven approach while positioning me as someone committed to continuing that work rather than just coasting on inherited wealth. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Business schools requested permission to use Mom's story as a case study. Young entrepreneurs reached out asking for mentorship. Property owners contacted Waypoint about potential partnerships. The story resonated far beyond the hospitality industry, touching people who'd experienced similar family dynamics or who'd built success while being underestimated. But the message that mattered most came from Russell. He showed up at the Russo House opening reception, waiting patiently in line like any other guest rather than trying to use his family connection to bypass the crowd. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he admitted when he finally reached me. "But I read the Forbes article, and I wanted to see what you and Aunt Catherine built. This place is incredible, Claire. It has soul. Thank you for coming. I meant it sincerely. And thank you for your letter. I appreciated your honesty. Can I ask you something?" Russell's voice dropped lower. "Do you think there's any chance for the family to repair what's been broken? Not going back to how things were, obviously, but maybe building something different going forward?" I considered the question carefully. "I think that depends on whether people are willing to do the hard work of actually changing their behavior and values, not just saying the right words. Gregory apologized, but I'm not sure if he's really different or just ashamed of being exposed. Beatrice reached out, but I don't know if she understands why her actions were harmful or just regrets the consequences." "And me?" Russell asked. "Do you think I'm capable of being different?" "I don't know yet. But the fact that you're asking the question and showing up here as a guest rather than demanding special treatment is a good start. Keep doing that, and we'll see." He nodded, accepting the conditional response. "That's fair. More than fair, actually." After he left, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the Russo House, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the dark water. The opening had been a success by every measure. Vincent had cried when he saw how we'd preserved his father's original craftsmanship while transforming the space into something new and beautiful. Guests raved about the design and the thoughtful details. The staff moved with confidence and pride, trained in the Waypoint philosophy of hospitality as genuine care rather than transactional service. This was what Mom had built, and what I was continuing to build. Not just hotels or properties, but spaces where people felt valued and seen. Not just a business, but a philosophy about how to move through the world with integrity and purpose. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Congratulations on tonight. Catherine would be so proud." Actually, she is proud. I can feel it. I smiled through sudden tears. "Me too," I typed back. "Me too." The wind off the river was cold, carrying the scent of water and city and possibility. In 6 weeks, I'd learned more about business and leadership and myself than I had in the previous 23 years combined. The learning curve ahead was still steep, and I'd undoubtedly make mistakes. But I was ready for it. Ready to honor Mom's legacy while creating my own. Ready to prove that success could be built on values rather than vanity. Ready to show that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift you could receive, because it meant nobody saw you coming until you'd already won. Below me, the reception continued, the sound of conversation and laughter rising up through the open terrace doors. People were connecting, celebrating, experiencing the kind of hospitality that made them feel at home even in an unfamiliar place. That's what it was all about. That's what Mom had understood and what I was learning to embrace. Business wasn't just about profit margins and market share. It was about creating value that went beyond the transaction, building something that made the world slightly better for having existed. I took one last look at the river, at the city Mom had chosen for her headquarters, at the life she'd built in quiet determination while everyone who should have celebrated her was too busy sneering to notice. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered into the night. "For the money, yes, but mostly for everything else. For teaching me what really matters. For showing me that strength doesn't require volume. For proving that you can succeed spectacularly while everyone thinks you're failing." The wind carried my words away, out over the water toward whatever came next. And I followed them inside, back to the celebration, back to the work, back to the life Mom had made possible through her sacrifice and vision and unwavering belief that I could handle whatever inheritance she left me. Not just the money. Not just the business. But the responsibility of using both wisely, generously, and with the kind of integrity that couldn't be bought at any price. The Forbes article changed everything in ways I hadn't anticipated. Within days, my inbox flooded with messages from women who'd grown up being told they weren't enough, who'd been underestimated by their families, who'd watched capable mothers be dismissed because their success didn't fit conventional expectations. Their stories mirrored mine in heartbreaking ways, and each message reminded me that Mom's experience wasn't unique. It was universal. One email in particular stayed with me. A woman named Lynette Patterson wrote about her mother who'd worked as a seamstress while secretly designing clothes that eventually sold in major department stores under someone else's name. She died without anyone in the family knowing she'd been the creative force behind a recognizable brand, choosing anonymity over recognition because she feared her husband would feel diminished by her talent. Reading stories like Lynette's made me realize that the Forbes article couldn't be the end of Mom's story. It needed to be the beginning of something larger. I scheduled a meeting with Marcus and Sarah Olson to discuss an idea that had been forming in my mind for weeks. We met at the Waypoint headquarters, in the conference room with windows overlooking the city. I'd prepared a presentation, something Mom had apparently done frequently when pitching new properties to investors. The irony of using her methods to honor her memory wasn't lost on me. "I want to establish a foundation," I began, pulling up the first slide. "The Catherine Brennan Foundation for Women's Economic Empowerment. It would provide grants, business mentorship, and educational resources to women who are building enterprises while facing skepticism or opposition from their families and communities." Marcus leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "That's ambitious. What kind of budget are you thinking?" "I want to allocate $15 million initially, with plans to grow it through strategic investments and additional fundraising." I clicked to the next slide showing preliminary budget breakdowns. Mom was already donating $5 million annually to various causes. I want to take $10 million from my personal inheritance and add it to that, creating a permanent endowment that can sustain the foundation indefinitely. Sarah's eyes widened. Claire, that's an enormous personal commitment. Are you certain you want to dedicate that much of your inheritance to this? Mom didn't build Waypoint just to accumulate wealth. She built it to prove something and to give me choices. I have more than enough left for any reasonable need or want. Using part of it to help other women prove their worth and build their dreams feels like exactly what she would want. We spent 3 hours mapping out the foundation's structure. Programs for seed funding to help women start businesses. Mentorship matching successful entrepreneurs with those just beginning their journeys. Educational scholarships for women pursuing business degrees who couldn't otherwise afford them. Legal assistance for women facing family opposition to their economic independence. Marcus suggested bringing in Helen Kovac to handle the legal framework, and Sarah volunteered to help design the foundation's headquarters and branding. By the time we finished, the concept had evolved from a vague idea into a concrete plan with timelines and measurable goals. That evening, I called Vincent to share the news. He'd become an unexpected mentor over the past months, his decades of business experience proving invaluable as I navigated Waypoint's challenges. His reaction to the foundation idea was immediate and enthusiastic. "Catherine would love this," he said, his voice warm with approval. She always believed that the best use of success was creating opportunities for others. "Marie and I would like to contribute to the foundation, if you'd accept our donation." "Vincent, you don't need to do that. The foundation will be well funded. Let me tell you something about dignity, Claire. When you bought the Russo house and gave me that consulting position, you didn't just save my family financially. You gave me back my sense of purpose. You treated my knowledge and experience as valuable rather than obsolete. That gift is worth more than the salary you pay me. Let us give back in whatever small way we can." His words hit me harder than I expected. I'd thought of the consulting arrangement as a practical solution, accessing Vincent's expertise while giving him income. I hadn't considered the emotional dimension, the validation that came from being valued for what you knew rather than discarded for what you no longer could do. The foundation launched 3 months later with a gala at the Russo house. I'd initially resisted the idea of a fancy fundraising event, but Sarah convinced me that visibility mattered. Women needed to see the foundation existed, needed to know there were resources available when they faced opposition or doubt. The guest list included successful women entrepreneurs, journalists, academics, and a carefully selected group of potential major donors. I debated whether to invite anyone from the Brennan family and ultimately decided to extend invitations to Gregory, Beatrice, and Russell. Their attendance would be a test of whether their apparent changes in attitude were genuine or performative. Gregory and Diane arrived together, both dressed impeccably but carrying themselves with noticeably less arrogance than I remembered. Beatrice came alone, her usual entourage of society friends notably absent. Russell brought a date, a woman he introduced as Dr. Simone Park, a pediatrician who worked with underserved communities. I watched them throughout the evening, observing how they interacted with other guests. Gregory spent significant time speaking with the director of a women's business incubator, asking detailed questions about challenges facing female entrepreneurs. Beatrice bid aggressively in the silent auction, eventually winning a mentorship package with one of the foundation's advisory board members. Russell and Simone both volunteered for the foundation's mentorship program, offering to work with young women interested in medicine and environmental science respectively. Their behavior suggested something had shifted, though I remained cautious about declaring victory too soon. Changed behavior over weeks didn't erase decades of condescension and cruelty. The evening's keynote speaker was a woman named Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, a Nigerian immigrant who'd built a pharmaceutical company despite her family's insistence that she abandon her ambitions and accept an arranged marriage. Her story was powerful and raw, detailing the isolation of choosing yourself when everyone you love demands you choose tradition instead. "My mother told me I was selfish for wanting education over marriage," Dr. Okonkwo said from the stage. "She said I was destroying our family's honor, that no man would want a wife who thought herself smarter than her husband. I went to university anyway, worked 3 jobs to pay tuition, slept in my car some nights because I couldn't afford both rent and books. The room was silent, everyone transfixed by her words. 20 years later, my company employs 3,000 people and develops medications that save lives. My mother is proud of me now, but she still doesn't understand why I had to fight her to get here. The foundation we're launching tonight is for women who are still in that fight, who are being told their dreams are selfish or inappropriate or impossible. You are not selfish. You are not wrong. You are building the future while others cling to the past. The applause was thunderous. I saw several people wiping away tears, including Beatrice. When Dr. Okonkwo finished and stepped off the stage, she sought me out directly. Your mother's story matters, Claire. She told me quietly, clasping my hands in hers. But your decision to share it and use it as a foundation for helping others matters even more. Thank you for your courage. The gala raised an additional $4 million beyond my initial commitment, far exceeding our projections. More importantly, it connected women who needed resources with people who could provide them. By the end of the evening, I'd witnessed at least a dozen conversations that would likely lead to business partnerships, mentorships, or job opportunities. As guests departed, Gregory approached me near the entrance. He'd been waiting for a moment when I wasn't surrounded by people, and his timing suggested intention rather than coincidence. This was remarkable, Claire. He gestured at the now empty event space. What you've created here, the foundation and everything it represents, is more meaningful than anything the Brennan family has accomplished in generations. Thank you, I said carefully, uncertain where this was heading. I want to make a significant donation to the foundation. Not tonight, not as part of the gala, but as a separate commitment. $250,000 annually for the next 5 years. The amount was substantial, especially given what Marcus had told me about Gregory's financial situation. The family shipping business was struggling, and Gregory's personal lifestyle had been scaled back considerably since the estate reading. Gregory, that's very generous, but I need to understand your motivation. Is this about assuaging guilt or genuinely supporting the mission? Both, if I'm honest. He met my eyes directly. I can't undo 20 years of dismissing Catherine and making you feel inferior. But I can try to honor what she built and support what you're creating. Maybe that's just another form of selfishness, trying to feel better about my past by writing checks. But the money will still help women who need it, regardless of why I'm giving it. His honesty was disarming. I'd expected defensiveness or a polished pitch. Instead, he offered raw acknowledgement of his complicated motives. I'll accept the donation with the understanding that it comes with no expectation of recognition or influence over foundation decisions. This isn't about rehabilitating the Brennan family image. It's about helping women achieve economic independence. Understood completely. Gregory extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I shook it. This doesn't fix everything between us, Claire. I know that. But maybe it's a start toward building something different than what we had. After he left, I found Russell and Simone helping the catering staff clean up, an unexpected gesture that would have been unthinkable for any Brennan family member a year ago. Russell had removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, stacking chairs with practiced efficiency. You don't have to do that, I told him. The venue has a cleaning crew scheduled. I know. Russell grinned. But Simone has this rule about never leaving a party without helping clean up, and she's convinced me it's good for my character. Something about not treating service workers like they're invisible. Your girlfriend is a good influence, I observed. She's actually my fiancée as of last week. Russell looked both proud and slightly terrified. I asked her last weekend, and somehow she said yes despite knowing about my family's history and reputation. Congratulations. I meant it sincerely. When's the wedding? We're thinking next summer, something small and meaningful rather than the massive society event my parents would prefer. We'd like you to come, if you're willing. Simone wants to meet the cousin who scared my father into actually examining his life choices. The description made me laugh despite myself. I didn't scare him into anything. He made his own choices about how to respond to Mom's revelations. Maybe, but you set things in motion. Russell set down the chairs he'd been stacking. Can I tell you something that might sound strange? I'm grateful for how everything happened. The estate reading was humiliating, sure, but it forced all of us to look at ourselves honestly for maybe the first time ever. I don't like what I saw, but I needed to see it. Over the following weeks, the foundation began its actual work beyond the launch gala. Our first cohort of grant recipients included 20 women from 7 different states, each with a business plan and a story of being dismissed or discouraged by people who should have supported them. Reading their applications broke my heart and inspired me in equal measure. One recipient, a woman named Carol Jennings from rural Montana, wanted to start a mobile veterinary clinic serving ranching communities that couldn't access traditional vet services. Her husband had told her the idea was impractical and financially irresponsible. Her father said women didn't have the temperament for large animal medicine. She applied to the foundation with a detailed business plan and a quiet desperation that reminded me of Mom's early years. I called Carol personally to tell her she'd been selected for a $50,000 grant plus 2 years of business mentorship. Her stunned silence lasted so long I thought the connection had dropped. Are you still there? I asked gently. I'm here. Her voice was thick with emotion. I just can't believe this is real. I've been told so many times that this dream was foolish, that I should give up and be realistic. Having someone say yes, having someone believe in me enough to invest real money, it's overwhelming. Your dream isn't foolish, Carol. It's needed and viable and exactly the kind of enterprise the foundation exists to support. We believe in you, and we're going to help you succeed. Similar conversations happened with each recipient. Women who'd been told they couldn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't succeed suddenly had resources and support that made their dreams possible. Watching them receive validation they'd been denied by their families and communities felt like continuing Mom's work in the most direct way possible. The foundation also connected me with women who'd known Mom through her quiet philanthropy over the years. A professor at Portland State University reached out to explain that Mom had anonymously funded scholarships for women in business programs for over a decade. A domestic violence shelter director shared that Mom had been their largest private donor, providing steady funding that allowed them to expand services without constantly worrying about closing their doors. Each revelation showed me another dimension of who Mom had been when nobody was watching. She'd used her success to create opportunities and safety for others, never seeking recognition or gratitude. Her generosity had been as private as her business empire, invisible to people who might judge or try to control how she allocated her resources. One afternoon, while reviewing foundation applications in my office, I received an unexpected visitor. Helen Kovac appeared at my door with a leather portfolio and a serious expression that immediately put me on alert. Claire, we need to discuss something sensitive. She closed the door behind her and sat down across from my desk. I've been contacted by an attorney representing Diane Brennan. She's requesting a meeting with you, separate from Gregory. I set down the application I'd been reading. What does she want? According to her attorney, she wants to apologize for her role in the family's treatment of you and Catherine. She's also dealing with health issues and wants to discuss a charitable bequest to the foundation in her will. Health issues? I hadn't heard anything about Diane being sick. Breast cancer, diagnosed 3 months ago. She's undergoing treatment, and the prognosis is uncertain. Helen's expression softened slightly. I'm not telling you this to manipulate you into meeting with her. You have every right to decline. But I wanted you to have full context before making a decision. I thought about Diane's role over the years. She'd been Gregory's enabler and echo, reinforcing his dismissive attitude toward Mom and amplifying his cruelty with her own barbs. But she'd also been shaped by expectations and pressures I couldn't fully understand, married into a family that demanded certain performances and punished deviation from their scripts. I'll meet with her, I finally said. But here in my office, not at the Brennan house or some neutral restaurant. And I want you present. Agreed. Helen made a note. I'll coordinate with her attorney. The meeting happened the following week. Diane arrived looking diminished, the expensive clothes hanging slightly loose on her frame. She'd always been impeccably put together, but illness had stripped away some of that careful polish. Without her usual armor of designer labels and professional makeup, she looked vulnerable and tired. "Thank you for seeing me, Claire." She sat down carefully, as if movement caused pain. "I know I have no right to ask for your time or attention after how I've treated you." Helen sat beside me in silent support while I waited for Diane to continue. "I'd learned from Mom that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply be quiet and let people reveal themselves. I've been doing a lot of thinking since my diagnosis. When you face your own mortality, you can't hide from your regrets anymore. I regret how I treated your mother. I regret every snide comment about her job, every time I made you feel less than, every moment I chose cruelty over kindness because it made me feel superior." Her voice cracked slightly, and she paused to compose herself. "I convinced myself that I was just supporting my husband, that family loyalty meant backing Gregory's attitudes and decisions. But that was cowardice dressed up as duty. I had my own voice and my own choices, and I chose wrong consistently for 20 years. Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, not unkindly. "Is it because you're sick and want absolution before you die?" "Partly, yes." Diane didn't flinch from the bluntness. "Facing death makes you want to clean up your messes and leave something better behind than you found. But it's also because I saw what you've built with the foundation, and it made me realize what Catherine accomplished while we were too blind to notice. You're both remarkable women, and I wasted decades resenting you for making me feel inadequate by comparison." "I never tried to make you feel inadequate," I said quietly. "I was just trying to survive in a family that treated me like I didn't matter." "I know. That's what makes my behavior even worse. You weren't attacking me. You were just existing, and I saw that existence as a threat because it highlighted my own insecurity and lack of purpose." Helen shifted slightly beside me, a subtle reminder that I didn't have to accept or reject anything Diane was offering. I could simply listen and decide later how to respond. "I want to leave a significant portion of my estate to the foundation," Diane continued. "My attorney has the details, but it's approximately $1.5 million. I know money doesn't fix what I've done, but maybe it can help other women avoid the kind of small-minded thinking that poisoned my life." "That's very generous." I chose my words carefully. "The foundation will use those resources to support women who are facing the kind of dismissal and discouragement you describe. There's one condition, though I hope you'll find it acceptable." Diane pulled an envelope from her purse. "I want the donation to be made in Catherine's name, acknowledging her as the inspiration for my support. I want there to be a permanent record that I recognized her worth, even if I did it too late." I took the envelope, finding inside a signed letter explaining her bequest and specifically honoring Mom's accomplishments and character. Reading Diane's words about Mom's brilliance and grace, written by someone who'd spent years denying both, was surreal and painful and somehow healing all at once. "I'll accept the bequest under those terms," I told her. "And I appreciate your honesty about your motivations and regrets." Diane stood to leave, moving with obvious discomfort. Before she reached the door, she turned back. "Your mother deserved so much better than what this family gave her. I hope knowing that she raised an extraordinary daughter who's continuing her work brings her peace, wherever she is." After she left, Helen and I sat in silence for several minutes. Processing the conversation and its implications took time. "That was genuine," Helen finally said. "I've been practicing law for 30 years, and you develop instincts about when people are being authentic versus performing." She meant every word. "I believe you." I folded Diane's letter carefully. It doesn't erase the past, but it matters that she acknowledged it. That evening, I drove to the cemetery where Mom was buried. I hadn't visited since that day months ago when I'd sat by her grave and promised to make her proud. Now I had news to share, updates on the foundation and the family's surprising evolution. "Hi, Mom." I settled into the grass despite the cold ground. "You won't believe what's been happening. The foundation launched, and it's already helping women who remind me so much of you. Women who are being told their dreams are impossible while they're actively making them real." I updated her on Carol and the mobile veterinary clinic, on the other grant recipients and their diverse businesses. I told her about the gala and Dr. Okonkwo's speech. I described Gregory's donation commitment and Diane's bequest and Russell's engagement to someone who seemed genuinely good for him. The family is changing, or at least some of them are trying to change. I don't know if it's enough or if it's sustainable, but it's something. I think you'd be surprised by their attempts at growth, even if you'd remain skeptical about their sincerity. The wind rustled through the bare trees overhead, and I pulled my coat tighter against the chill. I miss you every day, Mom. I miss calling you to celebrate good news or process frustrations. I miss your steady presence and quiet wisdom. But I feel you in the work I'm doing, in the choices I'm making, in the way I'm trying to honor what you taught me while finding my own path. I stood to leave, brushing grass and dirt from my jeans. The foundation is your real legacy, Mom. Not the money or the hotels, but the idea that success should lift others up, that strength doesn't require volume, and that the best revenge is building something beautiful while everyone else is too busy sneering to notice. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter somehow. The grief remained, would probably always remain in some form. But underneath it was something stronger and more enduring. Purpose. Direction. The certainty that I was doing exactly what Mom had prepared me to do, using the tools she'd given me to make the world slightly better than I found it. That was inheritance enough. 1 year after Mom's funeral, I stood in the ballroom of the Russo house surrounded by women whose lives had been transformed by the foundation. Carol Jennings had driven her mobile veterinary clinic over 300 miles to attend the anniversary celebration, bringing photographs of ranches she now served across Montana. A software developer named Priya Mehta displayed her app that connected immigrant women with business resources in their native languages. Everywhere I looked, I saw dreams made real because someone finally believed they were possible. The foundation had exceeded every goal we'd set. 47 businesses launched. 63 women enrolled in educational programs they couldn't have afforded otherwise. 12 lawsuits filed and won against family members who'd stolen from female relatives, using legal resources the foundation provided. Numbers that represented individual lives changed, families supported, futures secured. Marcus found me near the windows overlooking the river, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and amber. He handed me a glass of champagne and raised his own in a quiet toast. Catherine would be speechless, he said with genuine warmth. You've taken what she built and multiplied its impact beyond anything she imagined. We did this together. I clinked my glass against his. You, Sarah, Helen, Vincent, everyone who believed the foundation could matter. This isn't my achievement alone. But it was your vision. Marcus looked out at the gathering crowd. Your decision to make Catherine's story public, to use your platform for something larger than just running hotels. She gave you the resources, but you chose how to deploy them. That's leadership. Gregory approached us cautiously, his presence still generating complicated emotions despite a year of consistent effort at rebuilding trust. He'd followed through on his financial commitment to the foundation and had started volunteering with a nonprofit that provided business training to low-income communities. Small steps, but genuine ones. Claire, there's someone I'd like you to meet. He gestured to an older woman standing beside him. This is Janet Morrison. She worked with Catherine 20 years ago when she was buying her first investment property. Janet's handshake was firm, her eyes sharp with intelligence. Your mother was extraordinary. I watched her negotiate that first deal, and I knew immediately she was someone special. She asked better questions than most experienced investors, and she never let anyone intimidate her into making bad decisions. I didn't know Mom had anyone helping her back then. I'd always imagined her navigating everything alone. She didn't ask for help often, but when she did, it was because she genuinely wanted to learn, not because she needed someone to solve her problems. Janet smiled at the memory. Gregory reached out after reading about the foundation and asked if I'd share my stories about Catherine with you. I'm glad he did. Your mother deserves to be remembered by people who saw her brilliance firsthand. The gesture from Gregory was surprisingly thoughtful, and I told him so after Janet moved on to speak with other guests. He ducked his head slightly, uncomfortable with praise he clearly still felt he didn't deserve. I'm trying, he said simply. Some days are easier than others, but but I'm trying to be someone Catherine wouldn't be ashamed to call family. Beatrice arrived late, making her way through the crowd with purpose. She'd changed dramatically over the past year, shedding the pretentious social circle that had defined her identity and redirecting her energy toward meaningful philanthropy. She now served on 3 nonprofit boards and had become a fierce advocate for women's economic independence. "I have news," she announced, pulling me aside. "I've decided to sell the Maple Ridge house. It's too much space for one person, and maintaining it feels like preserving a monument to values I no longer hold. I'm donating half the proceeds to the foundation." "Beatrice, that's your family home." "Are you certain?" "It's a building that represents everything wrong about how we measured worth and success." She was resolute. "I'd rather the money support women who are building real value in the world than keep paying gardeners to maintain a showplace nobody actually enjoys." Russell and Simone arrived together, both glowing with the particular happiness of people deeply in love. Their wedding had been intimate and joyful, focused on celebration rather than status. I'd attended and witnessed a ceremony that honored both their backgrounds without trying to impress anyone. "We have an announcement," Simone said, squeezing Russell's hand. "We're pregnant. Due in 6 months. Congratulations." I hugged them both, genuinely delighted. "That's wonderful news. We want to name her Catherine if it's a girl," Russell added quietly. "To honor Aunt Catherine and everything she represented. Would that be all right with you?" The request caught me completely off guard, and tears sprang to my eyes before I could stop them. "She'd be honored. Thank you for asking." As the evening progressed, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that cold November funeral to this moment of celebration and community. Mom had given me more than wealth. She'd given me a blueprint for how to live with integrity, how to succeed without losing yourself, how to build something meaningful from nothing but vision and determination. The luxury convoy that had shocked everyone at the funeral hadn't been cars or possessions. It had been this, the ripple effects of Mom's life spreading outward through every woman the foundation helped, every business that succeeded, every family supported by economic independence that couldn't be taken away. I stepped onto the terrace, needing a moment alone with my thoughts. The city light sparkled below, and the river flowed endlessly toward the ocean, carrying stories and dreams and possibilities along its path. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered into the night. "For believing I could handle this. For trusting me with your legacy. For showing me that real inheritance isn't measured in dollars but in the values we carry forward and the lives we touch." The door opened behind me, and Sarah stepped out. "The gathering is asking for a speech. You ready?" I took one last look at the river, at the city Mom had chosen, at the life she'd built in quiet determination. Then I turned back toward the celebration, toward the women whose dreams were becoming reality, toward the future Mom had made possible through her sacrifice and vision. "I'm ready." Inside, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by believing in themselves when nobody else would, I raised my glass and spoke from the heart about second chances and hidden strength and the kind of inheritance that actually mattered. The kind my mother had given me, wrapped not in luxury cars or dramatic reveals, but in every lesson she'd taught, every value she'd modeled, every moment she'd chosen integrity over approval. That was the real convoy that arrived at her funeral, though only I could see it then. Now everyone could see it, reflected in the faces of women who'd been told they couldn't and proved everyone wrong. Just like Mom had done. Just like I was learning to do. Just like countless others would do with the foundation's support. The inheritance continued, multiplying with each life touched, each dream realized, each woman who learned that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest gift you could receive. Because it meant nobody saw you coming until you'd already changed everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.